Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
The house smelled like vanilla cake, grocery store flowers, and cheap body spray. Probably one of Ethan's friends doused themselves in something fruity and obnoxious. I had just finished wiping down the counters for the third time that afternoon, even though they didn't need it, and my knees were still sore from scrubbing the baseboards 2 nights ago. No one asked me to do that, but no one else would have either. That's how it had always been. If I didn't do it, it didn't get done. And I guess somewhere along the way, they just stopped noticing. Or maybe they never did. Ethan was turning 18. Legally an adult, but still with crumbs on his chin and a voice that cracked every other sentence. He was tall now, taller than his father, even, but I still saw the toddler who used to grab my legs when he got scared. The same little boy who used to call me mommy with a mouth full of applesauce. That boy was gone, and I didn't realize I'd buried him until tonight. The living room was loud, packed with Ethan's friends, boys in backwards caps and girls in tight jeans and tank tops that looked like they'd been washed one too many times. Tom was there too, sitting on the recliner like some kind of king, a half-empty beer resting on his belly, his remote in hand like a goddamn scepter. He hadn't helped with a damn thing all day, of course. Not the decorations, not the food, not even lifting a folding chair out of the garage. He said something about letting me do my thing, like I was in my element, like throwing together a party for ungrateful people was a fucking hobby of mine. I had just set the last tray of mini sandwiches on the dining table when I heard Tom bark my name from the living room. Lena, where's the lighter? We're ready for cake. No, please. No, thank you. Just a command, like always. I found the lighter in the junk drawer. It's always there, no matter how much junk is piled on top of it. Lit the 18 little flames, one for each year I'd given this boy. 18 years of making sure he had socks, making sure he had snacks for school, of staying up when he had a cough, of pretending to smile when I wanted to scream. 18 years of putting him first, and Tom second, and myself dead fucking last. I carried the cake out, balancing it on a tray like a waitress at one of the jobs I worked back when Tom couldn't hold one. Everyone clapped. Cameras came out. A couple of the girls actually sang a little. It was a decent cake. Chocolate with peanut butter frosting. Ethan's favorite. Made from scratch. Took me hours. He leaned forward to blow out the candles, then paused, turned to me with a smirk. God, the same smirk Tom used to give me before we got married, when it was charming instead of condescending, and said, "Thanks for the cake, Mom. You've always been great at, Maid stuff." The room burst into laughter. Not all of it cruel. Some of them probably didn't even realize what had been said. Just laughing because everyone else was. Tom laughed too. That deep, barking laugh he saves for when he wants to feel like the alpha in the room. He looked at me over his beer and added, "She is good at that, huh?" I stared at them. At both of them. My husband and my son. My life's work and my life's mistake. And in that moment, I felt absolutely nothing. No rage. No heartbreak. Not even embarrassment. Just silence. Like something inside me had finally powered down. I quietly blew out the candles. Didn't make a wish. Wishes are for people who think they're helpless. People who haven't figured out the math yet. I had. I'd been doing the math for years. Counting pennies. Counting minutes. Counting all the times I bit my tongue so hard it bled. They didn't know it yet, but this party? This wasn't for Ethan. It was for me. It was the last show I was ever gonna put on. I smiled, took the cake back to the kitchen, and started slicing it for the kids. My hands didn't even shake. They'd get their cake. They'd laugh and eat and make crumbs on the rug I'd shampooed the night before. They'd think I was just the maid. And that was fine for now. Because that night, as I cleaned up the wrapping paper no one else bothered to pick up, and rinsed out red Solo cups, and scraped frosting off the floor, I made a decision. A cold, calm decision. That was the last birthday party I'd ever host in this house. That was the last time they'd get to laugh at me without consequences. That was the night I stopped being the maid and started becoming something else entirely. You'd be amazed at the things a woman will put up with when she thinks it's love, or when she's afraid she won't survive without it. And I'm not talking about the big dramatic stuff, like infidelity or yelling or breaking dishes in the kitchen. I mean the slow rot. The everyday insults. The thousand tiny ways someone can tell you, without even saying a word, that you're worth less than them. That was the kind of marriage I lived in. Not a battlefield, but a quiet little graveyard where my self-worth went to die, one unwashed plate at a time. It didn't start like that. No, Tom was charming once. Not handsome in the way that turns heads, but he had this way of making you feel seen until he didn't. We met at a community barbecue, back when I still believed in small talk and laughter and that good men actually existed. He was quick with compliments and quicker with plans. Big dreams he had. Wanted to open his own auto shop. Said he just needed the right woman beside him. A ride or die, he used to say. I was 24 and stupid enough to think that sounded romantic. We had Ethan less than a year after getting married. I dropped out of nursing school 2 semesters from graduating. Tom said we'd be fine, that once his business took off, I could go back and finish. That was the first in a long line of promises he made and forgot like grocery lists. The auto shop never opened. He got hired at a repair chain, lasted 6 months, then quit because his manager had it out for him. After that, it was gig after gig, excuses stacked like empty beer cans in the garage. Meanwhile, I worked at a diner during the day and cleaned offices at night, trying to keep the lights on and the fridge full. Ethan never went without. Tom did when he was too lazy to cook for himself, which was often. I never did. I couldn't afford to. And the worst part? I still kept trying to believe. I still ironed Tom's shirts, thinking maybe he'd get off the couch and apply for one of those jobs he kept talking about. I still smiled through holidays, cooking full meals while they watched TV like I wasn't even there. I fixed the goddamn sink one Thanksgiving when the pipe burst under the cabinet and Tom just shrugged and said he'd get to it later. I was on my knees, elbows deep in muck, while the turkey got cold. Ethan saw all of it, every little bit. And for a while, I thought maybe he'd turn out different. He used to help me fold laundry, asked me how my day was. But somewhere around 13, something shifted. He stopped talking to me unless he needed something. Started parroting things Tom would say, like, "Mom's always so emotional," or "You're overreacting." I could see him slipping away, inch by inch, and I still tried to hold on. Tried to bake his favorite cookies. Picked him up late from basketball practice, even when I had to work a double shift the next morning. It never mattered. The more I gave, the less I seemed to mean to either of them. I think the real change happened about 5 years ago. I was 47, exhausted, and one night I just sat on the kitchen floor, holding a spatula like it was the last piece of armor I had left. I realized then that no one was coming to save me. Not Tom. Not Ethan. Not Jesus or Oprah or a surprise inheritance. If I wanted out, I'd have to build the damn ladder myself. So I did. I enrolled in night school under the radar. Took 2 classes a semester at the community college across town. I told them I was helping a friend with rides. That part wasn't a lie. I got my business license for residential cleaning, started picking up clients from a woman I used to clean with years ago. It started small. 3 homes a week. Then 5. Then I got smart, started hiring 2 other women, split the work, took a cut, and still did the books myself. In 2 years, I had saved over $500,000 working part-time. Can you believe that? That wasn't the only thing I did. I also started learning how to read financial documents, watched videos about real estate law, and, here's the best part, got Tom to sign over the deed to the house into a trust one created. I told him it was for tax reasons, and he didn't question it. Not once. Just signed where I pointed. He never read shit. He was too busy watching reruns and nursing his second 6-pack of the day. I paid off the mortgage in full with the money I made cleaning other people's homes. Homes where the husbands said, "Thank you," and the sons held doors open for their mothers. Homes that smelled like fresh bread and decency. I came home from those jobs and walked into a house where no one looked up when I walked in the door. That night after the birthday party, when Ethan called me the maid, it didn't even sting the way you might think. Because he was right, sort of. I was the maid. But I was also the architect, the foundation, the one who kept the walls from collapsing in on them every time they forgot how to live like human beings. They thought they owned everything. They thought I was lucky to have them. They didn't know I had been planning this escape like a heist movie. Every dollar, every lie, every signature on paper, I'd set the stage perfectly. They didn't own a damn thing. They just hadn't figured it out yet. 3 days after the birthday party, I didn't make breakfast. I didn't clean the kitchen or fold the laundry that had been sitting in the dryer for almost a week, waiting for me like everything else in that damn house always did. I didn't leave a note or slam a door or cry or scream or break a single dish. I just got up before sunrise, dressed in jeans and a hoodie I kept in the back of the closet, grabbed my purse and walked out of the house I'd carried like a coffin on my back for over 2 decades. It was still dark when I started the engine of the old Honda, the one no one paid attention to because it was just Mom's car, even though I'd been making quiet payments on it for years. I'd bought it in cash last month, one of the many final steps in a plan so precise it could have been military strategy if anyone had bothered to look closely. But no one ever did. That was the trick, really. I was invisible enough to go unnoticed, but vital enough to be missed only after the damage was done. I drove with the windows down, letting the salt air creep in as I headed toward the coast. The sky turned purple behind me, then pink, then gold, and still I didn't look back once. I wasn't running, I hate that word. This wasn't a getaway. This was an arrival. I was going toward something for the first time in years, not away from it. By 7 in the morning, I had checked into a no-frills motel off a stretch of highway near the ocean. It wasn't glamorous. The bedspread was scratchy, the lamps flickered, and the coffee came out of a machine that sounded like it was trying to cough up gravel, but I loved every single ugly inch of it. It was mine for 3 prepaid nights. No one knew where I was. No one could follow. I sat on the bed with my back against the headboard, drinking that terrible coffee like it was champagne. Then I pulled out my phone, logged into my bank account, and smiled. All the accounts were in my name. The trust. The holding company. The backup savings I had at a different bank just in case something went wrong with the first one. Every dollar was accounted for. Every paper trail was clean and tied up in neat little bows of legal precision. They didn't even know what hit them yet. At that very moment, while I sipped coffee from a styrofoam cup with my legs crossed and the TV playing muted weather reports in the background, Tom was answering the first phone call he'd taken from the mortgage company in over 6 years. Apparently, they'd noticed missed payments dating back 6 months. Tom was confused, of course. He probably thought the payments were automatic, probably thought I was still handling them like I always did. But I wasn't. I had stopped paying 6 months ago, right after I paid off the remaining balance on the house and switched ownership from our joint names into the revocable trust under my control. What he didn't know was that the name on the deed wasn't his anymore. Hadn't been for over 4 years. He signed the documents, just like he always did, without reading them, because I told him it was for a tax break, and he was too lazy or too drunk or too arrogant to question it. By noon, he would have received the eviction notice. It came by certified mail, the kind that requires a signature. I imagined him opening it with a beer still in his hand, squinting at the big, bold letters like they were written in another language. I imagined Ethan asking what was going on, probably still in his pajamas, wondering why the Wi-Fi wasn't working anymore, because I had cut that too. They were about to learn what it meant to be unprepared. There would be yelling. Probably punching walls. Maybe a few pathetic calls to the mortgage company demanding answers. But there were no answers to give. Only consequences. Legal ones. The trust was airtight. The debt-free property was mine. The holding company, also mine. The utilities, all in my name, were now canceled. The walls were closing in, and I wasn't there to cushion the blow anymore. I had been the insulation in that house, keeping it warm, safe, livable. Without me, it was just 4 cold walls and a roof no one earned. I sent one text, short and final. I sent it to both Tom and Ethan in a group chat they rarely used except to ask me when dinner was ready or if I'd seen someone's hoodie. 3 days. Get out. No explanation. No negotiations. Just a deadline. They had 10 days legally. I gave them 3. By the time they processed what was happening, I'd already booked an appointment with a real estate agent to sell the house. Cash buyer preferred. No sentimental value attached. I didn't want to see the place again. I didn't want to hear their voices echoing in those walls like old ghosts. I wanted it gone. The physical evidence of my years of unpaid labor, thankless holidays, and fake smiles, it had served its purpose, and now it was just another asset. I sat back in the motel room, turned the volume up on the television, and left. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It wasn't angry or hysterical. It was soft, almost amused, like a woman finally remembering something important after years of forgetting. It was the sound of freedom. Not flashy, not triumphant. Just real. Quiet. Earned. They thought they'd built something permanent. They thought that house was theirs by default, because men like Tom and boys like Ethan grow up believing the world owes them structure, that the women in their lives are just accessories who belong to the furniture. But houses aren't homes without heart, and they didn't have any of mine left. They thought they owned everything. They didn't own a damn thing. The first voicemail came at 6 in the morning, and it was exactly what I expected. Tom growling into the phone like a wounded animal, trying to sound in control, but clearly falling apart at the seams. "What the hell did you do, Lena? You think this is funny? You think this is a game?" he barked, the words slurred just enough to make me wonder if the bottle had even made it back to the cabinet after last night. He didn't even ask if I was okay, didn't bother to pretend he was hurt, just angry, just confused that the woman he thought was permanently planted under his thumb had dared to move without permission. Over the next few hours, the voicemails kept coming, angry, then pleading, then pathetic. He tried calling from different numbers. Blocked. Left voicemails that ranged from threats of legal action to pitiful cries about how I was tearing the family apart. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, eating dry cereal out of a plastic cup and letting the messages pile up like junk mail. Every time the phone lit up, I felt calmer. Not angrier. Not anxious. Just more certain that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. Ethan, for his part, didn't call, not right away. Instead, he did what his generation seems to think is the same thing as communication. He posted a video. A shaky, half-lit clip in his bedroom, voice cracking with carefully manufactured emotion, looking straight into the camera like he was auditioning for sympathy. "So, my mom kicked me and my dad out 3 days after my 18th birthday," he said, pausing to add a heavy sigh for dramatic effect. She didn't even say anything. Just left. No warning. No explanation. Cold as hell. He tried to paint me as some cruel villain, some unhinged woman who walked away from her family because she couldn't handle aging or pressure or whatever nonsense he'd cooked up in his head. The comments under the video were mixed. Some told him to man up, others called me heartless. It didn't go viral, thank God, but it got around enough that his girlfriend saw it. Or maybe she saw through it. Either way, she dumped him by the end of the day. Posted a vague caption on her Instagram about real characters showing under pressure, and just like that, he was down a mom, a house, and a girl. The motel parking lot was almost empty when Tom finally showed up. He pulled in like he owned the place, his old pickup screeching just enough to announce his arrival before he even slammed the door shut. I watched from the window as he scanned the building, spotted me through the curtain, and stormed over with all the grace of a drunk charging into a church. I didn't flinch when he pounded on the door. I didn't answer right away either. Let him stew for a few seconds, let him remember that for once, he wasn't in control of the timing. When I finally opened the door, he didn't wait to be invited in. He barged inside, fists clenched at his sides, jaw tight, eyes wild. "What the hell is wrong with you, Lena?" he snapped, standing in the center of the room like it still belonged to him. "You just leave? No explanation? No warning? You evicted your own damn family." I stood by the small table in the corner, arms crossed, voice steady. "I gave you 3 days," I said. "More than I ever got from you when you disappeared to the garage or the bar or your buddy's place for hours without a word. You had no right," he shouted, pointing a finger at me like a child who's been denied dessert. That house was ours. No, I said, still calm. It was mine. You just lived there. Like a guest who never said thank you. He sputtered, face flushing. I'll get a lawyer, he threatened, as if that would undo years of neglect, signed documents, and my meticulous planning. You can't just throw us out. I laughed then, not out of cruelty, but because it was genuinely funny, how little he knew, how little he ever bothered to learn. Good luck, I said, reaching into the drawer where I'd stashed the folder of trust documents, receipts, emails, and notarized signatures. I kept all the receipts. He didn't have a response to that. Just stood there, mouth half open, like the truth was a punch he hadn't braced for. And then Ethan walked in. I hadn't seen my son in 3 days, and when he walked into that room, it was like watching a ghost in the skin of someone I used to know. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just looked at me, hurt and confused and too proud to admit either. Why, Mom? He asked. You just left us. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked over to my suitcase, unzipped the side pocket, and pulled out a manila folder I'd been holding onto for months. I handed it to him. What's this? He asked, flipping it open. It's a scholarship application, I said. Full ride. Out of state. I've filled it out for you. Got the recommendation letters. You just need to accept. He looked stunned, like he couldn't process the information. You did this? For me. I nodded. I did a lot for you. Most of it you didn't notice. Tom scoffed behind him. Trying to buy forgiveness now? No, I said, walking to the door. Trying to give him a way out. Whether he takes it is up to him. I looked at Ethan one last time and added, you can leave with him. Or stay with your dad. But either way, I'm done being invisible. Then I stepped outside and let the door shut behind me. 6 months passed, quietly, without drama or declarations, without anyone knocking at my door to ask what happened or why I did what I did, which was a blessing in its own strange way. The days started soft and ended slow, and I learned to enjoy the kind of silence that doesn't feel like punishment. I rented a small apartment on the 2nd floor of a weathered brick building where the windows faced east and caught the sun by 7 every morning like clockwork. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and more than that, it was safe. There was a quiet hum of life around me, a neighbor who watered her plants at the same time every afternoon, a kid who skateboarded across the parking lot with the same clumsy rhythm, a cat that visited my balcony even though I never fed it. There was a rhythm, a small and steady one, and I let myself fall into it like a woman finally allowed to rest. I worked part-time at a bookstore just a few blocks away, the kind of place with crooked shelves and the smell of old paper baked into the walls. I stalked, I dusted, I answered questions about fiction and poetry and self-help, and no one there knew anything about my past. They didn't know about the house or Tom or Ethan. They just knew I liked black coffee, didn't mind early shifts, and always reshelved everything in perfect alphabetical order. That was enough for me. Sometimes, I'd sit behind the counter and actually read again, novels I'd started in college and never finished, stories by women who wrote like they'd survived something, like they knew what it meant to live invisible and then claw your way out of it. I started painting, too, not professionally, not even well, but I'd always wanted to try it, and now that the house and its endless demands were behind me, I had the time and the silence to see what my hands could make. The first painting was a mess, colors bleeding into each other, shapes that didn't quite know what they were, but I hung it above the little kitchen table anyway, because it felt honest. The second one was better. The third made me cry, though I still couldn't tell you why. I kept painting. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes with music playing. Sometimes in silence. There was no one there to criticize the mess or call it a waste of time. I even went on a date. Just one. With a man I met at the bookstore who actually listened when I spoke, who didn't interrupt or try to turn every story into something about himself. We had dinner at a quiet diner. Talked about books and weather and the strange comfort of not needing to impress anyone. We didn't make plans for a second date, and that was fine. It was enough to know I could still do it, to sit across from someone and not shrink. Sometimes I checked Ethan's Instagram out of habit. He didn't post anymore. Not since the video. Not since his girlfriend left and the internet didn't give him the sympathy he'd hoped for. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't want one. But sometimes I wondered if he thought about me. If he'd taken the scholarship. If he'd figured out that I'd spent years preparing it like a gift he didn't know he needed. Tom, as far as I heard through the grapevine, was drinking more. They were renting a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood with cracked sidewalks and bad plumbing, the kind of place I used to clean for women who never made eye contact when they handed me cash. Tom worked odd jobs now and then. Ethan had picked up night shifts at a warehouse nearby. The golden boy glow had dimmed. Whatever throne they thought they sat on had long since turned to dust. One day a letter showed up. No return address. No name. Just a small envelope tucked into the mail slot, sealed tight, handwritten in block letters. Inside, there was only a single sheet of paper. No paragraphs. No context. Just 3 words written dead center in black ink. You were right. No punctuation. No signature. Just that. Just enough. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stared at it for a moment, then smiled. A real smile. The kind I hadn't worn in years, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. Then I folded the letter once, carefully, and tossed it in the trash. Because I didn't need to keep it. I already knew. I'd always known. They thought I was weak. But weak people don't blow up their entire life and walk away smiling. Weak people don't sit quietly through 2 decades of being dismissed, erased, and underestimated, only to get up one morning and pull the entire rug out from under the men who laughed at them. I didn't destroy them. I didn't lift a finger to hurt them. I just let them see who they really were without me. No more masks. No more excuses. Just the plain, cold truth. The house? That house they thought they ruled over? They were never paying attention. It was always in my name. Every room they tracked mud through. Every door they slammed. Every bill they assumed got paid by magic. It was mine. It had always been mine. They just never bothered to ask.